At this time, we will allow members of the public to address any agenda item that is posted. And if you don't have a agenda at the back, there is an agenda at the back, and any of those questions that you would like to address, this would be the time to do it. But you need to bring me a sign-up sheet showing the agenda item and your name. Is there anybody that wants to discuss anything at this time?
Here's two that turned them in.
All right, let's see here. Hold on just a second. Morning, Rick. All right, we'd like to recognize Mr. Rick Lawrence.
I want to talk about the petition for emergency services.
Yes.
First of all, I support Hudson Volunteer Fire Department, monetarily anyway. However, I'd like the commissioners to remember that unanimously we decided not to raise taxes last year for law enforcement. But I do believe my concerns about the district is that right now the state has changed ad valorem taxes and school finances. Many schools are finding short funds. I'm not sure that ad valorem at this time is the best way to finance this on this year anyway. I haven't seen any plan at all. Don't know what the plan is, budget is for 5 years. The emergency services districts are capped at 10%. I'd like to know what percentage they're gonna start at and what the tax base is that they're working on, and some type of budget to where these expenditures need to go. The board, I think, should be at least 5 members, only one of which is with the volunteer fire department. This will stop what I call the Christmas syndrome. We got it, we spend it. There'll have to be some type of permanent staff to handle the financial side of it, dealing with the state. Y'all that deal with the state know the reports and auditing required, which would be separate from your donations that they receive. My wish would be that we have a more comprehensive plan. I don't have anything to do against the fire department or anybody else, believe me.
Okay.
But if we're gonna tax this, I'm 100% for it. If we can take a portion of that money to the sheriff's department so that we can get residential deputies and more law coverage out there also. If we're gonna raise it, let's raise it to the point where you do the most good. Everybody wants to be safe, everybody wants to have good fire protection, good police protection and that. The majority of Hudson does not live in the city limits. Okay, and it's a big county. Greg can tell you, I don't mean how many miles it is from Highway 7 to the valley, about 60-something miles, I think. That's a lot of coverage for one man. I think we should table this for at least 12 months. I think the fire department needs to have public hearings, get public input. 150 votes, not hard to get on petition. 1,000 to pass it's going to be pretty tough. Additionally, this year, there's a state income tax question on the ballot that comes up. It's a yes and no question. Do you want to have state income tax, yes or no? I'm afraid with this leading the way that anything talking about tax increase is dead in the water anyway. I think it's a waste of time and effort to try to put it on the ballot this year. Other than that, other than having some amendment have to be voted on every time we increase that percentage, I have no problem with the plan.
Thank you, Rick. All right, Mr. Ronnie Finch.
Yes, sir.
You're not wanting to talk about an agenda item?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. If you would like to, we can't discuss anything this court that's not an agenda item.
Yes, sir.
But if you would like to get on the agenda in 2 weeks, you're certainly welcome to do that, and we will make it an agenda item, and then you can discuss it as much as you would like to.
Yes, that'll work.
Okay. Would you like to have this passed on to your commissioner
Sure.
first? Okay. All right. All right. Thank you, sir. Is there any others? Well, I had the 2 sheets.
Also, I turned in one a few days ago concerning the road maintenance out there where I'm at.
Okay, it'd be, oh, okay, yes, sir. Yes, sir, it'd be the same thing.
Yes,
Same thing, and that is no problem at all. Be glad, matter of fact, looking forward to hearing what you've got to say, but it'll have to be on an agenda item, which would be on the next Commissioner's Court.
That'd be fine.
Okay, and that's in 2 weeks.
Do we, just need to come up here and present ourselves and discuss the situation, or do we need to have digital images, or what would y'all prefer?
Whatever you'd like to do.
Yeah, just
Discussion,
come tell
actually.
us.
to
Tell us
begin
what
with.
you
Go
got.
ahead,
Yeah.
Commissioner.
Yeah, just bring whatever you got, buddy, and just show us what you're talking
Well,
about.
you know, road's been there about,
Yeah.
I've been living there 40 years. Rick.
Yeah, yeah,
This is the worst I've ever seen.
yeah. Just bring it
Talk
on
about it. We passed that.
2 weeks.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You bet.
You bet. All right, any others? All right, at this time, we'd like to close this discussion and move on to item number 6. Discussion action on the approval or for the renewal of the general liability insurance on Angelina County Airport dwellings and/or select or reject terrorism coverage.
Gentlemen, Bartley, Baggett, and Shan sent the renewal notice to us, and as you'll see, the premium is $761.25. This is the same as we paid last year for it. It's an annual coverage, and if you want to select the, or add terrorism coverage, then it's gonna be a $31.50 additional premium to that. We've never had the terrorism coverage in the past, but this is on the dwellings at the airport.
Hangars and the terminal.
No, I think it's, when it says airport dwellings, this is for those houses that we have out there.
I thought that was coverage on the, actually on the airport. I think we had separate policies on the rentals. Gary, is that
It
true, or
says
are you
dwellings,
sure?
one family, it says dwellings.
Wow,
So
okay.
we got 3 dwellings out there, so.
All right, I stand corrected then. That is on, for those of you in the audience that are following this, we actually have, the airport several years back expanded some territory so we could extend runways and this sort of thing in the future. And there was dwellings on those locations. So these are actual rental houses that we have out there that the airport owns that we're talking about. Gentlemen, what do y'all want to do about the terrorism coverage?
If it's on the dwellings, it's gonna be covered under a separate policy. So
All right.
I see no need in having 2 insurances.
All right, do you want to make that in a form of a motion?
I'm making a motion, we drop it.
All right, and to go ahead and go forward with the other coverage?
Yes.
All right,
Say,
allowing me to sign it?
The opposite, yes, so
Okay, all right,
I didn't see where it had
No.
any authorization for you to sign, but
all right. We have a motion, do we have a second?
say,
All right, second, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
aye.
Sounds unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, item number 7, discussion action on the approval of an interlocal agreement between Angelina County and DETCOG for the 2020 to 2021 911 public safety answering point services and the 911 automatic location information maintenance services, AIL. All right, gentlemen?
well, I want 911 services to continue.
All right. This is a yearly agreement that we sign with them, and it's just a continuation of what we've already got going.
Motion to approve.
Say,
Motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? All in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, gentlemen. All right, item number 8, appearance of Mr. Eric Carver of Axley Roady LLP to give presentation of the FY ending 2018 audit report. Good morning.
Good morning, Judge. Good morning, Commissioners. It's good to be with you again this year. I've met last week with Janice and the judge, and we went through things in great detail, so today I'm going to be fairly brief, but if there's any questions you have as we're talking about things, please let me know, or if you look at things later and have more questions, please feel free to contact me. I want to begin with the letter you have with the report. And this letter just simply outlines that basically everything went well with the audit this year. Janice and her staff and all the county staff are always very cooperative and helpful in getting the audit done. You had no significant changes in any of your policies or anything like that. Everything was fairly routine, and that's a good thing. So just want to point that out. You know, everything continues to move well within the county. So to go through the audit report, beginning on page 7, you have our opinion. And we are, as we have for many, many years, giving you the highest level of assurance we can that everything is materially correct for the governmental activities, and that's putting all the funds together, adding capital assets, debt, sort of a snapshot of the entire operation. The business type activities, and that's the landfill and the airport. And each major fund, which is the general fund and all of the road and bridge funds, and the aggregated other fund information, which is your various special projects, capital projects, all of those individual funds. We did this year, if you look at page 8 of this, we did a single audit because of your federal expenditures exceeded $750,000. And we have a unmodified, clean opinion on that. Everything was correct with your compliance with the requirements on the federal side. So again, that's good. Looking at page 15 and 16, I want to begin by talking about the statement of net position. And again, the governmental activities is combining all the special revenues, the road and bridge, capital projects, debt service, general fund into a single column there. And this year you had a very healthy year for the governmental activities. Assets were up about $800,000. Your liabilities decreased by about $3.9 million. Most of that was related to your pension. I'm going to talk about that in the notes in a few minutes. And your deferred outflows increased about $3.3 million, again, related to the pension obligation. So we'll discuss that in more detail. But overall, the governmental activities increased $765,000. So very solid year. When we look at business activities, the assets increased $2.3 million. Most of that was related to the construction at the airport of almost $2.3 million. And so it's in your capital assets, so it wasn't an increase in your cash or receivables, but it was that capital asset activity where you saw that increase. Your liabilities increased pretty much on schedule, with the biggest portion of that being your landfill retirement obligation. So, you know, you're setting aside that money for that future liability issue as you go for the landfill. And so that increased your liabilities about $300,000. Overall, the business activities increased $2 million for the year in net assets. And we'll talk about the detail of that in the funds in just a minute. On page 16 and 17, you have the income statement, basically the statement of activities. Overall, the governmental funds saw a $2 million increase in revenues. The biggest areas for this increase were with grants and with sales tax. Your expenditures increased about $400,000. So you sort of flipped your change in net position, where you had about an $800,000 loss last year. You had a $760,000 increase this year. The the business type activities had a $2.9 million increase in revenues. $2.5 million of that was the grant, particularly for the airport. So that's the big increase there. Its expenditures were up about $400,000 for those funds, but it saw a $2.5 million increase in its net income. Again, primarily that grant for the airport was what took care of most of that. If you look at page 18 and 19, we get to the fund financial statements, and these are what you look at on a monthly basis and you operate more on. And when I look, the county continues to be in a very healthy financial position with cash and investments a little over $21 million. When you look at fund balance, which is always a good indicator, the one thing I want to point out is the fund balance is a little distorted from what your operations are, because December is your highest point of cash during the year. So as you're going into the budget cycle, you know, understand you're not necessarily looking at your lowest point of fund balance, which is really probably August or September, and it's probably 30 to 40% lower than these fund balances. So when we talk about fund balance, and I've talked about it in the past, that you want to maintain, probably about 90 days operating reserves, you're usually going to be at that in December, but you need to look at it more at your low point of August or September, because probably about 60% of your revenues come in one big chunk there in January. And so that's a factor to look at. But as I said, looking at fund balance, it's a good indicator for what reserves you have to go forward. And the general fund has about 49% in unassigned fund balance of what its annual expenditures are, which seems high, but again, in December, they're getting all that property tax money. It's there waiting to be used, so it's a little distorted. It's sort of one of your higher points of the year, cash-wise and fund balance-wise. You're probably significantly lower than that in August and September. The road and bridge funds, if you look at them combined, they're about 26% of what their annual expenditures are, but 3 of the 4 funds are below that 90-day reserve limit, and that's at year end, which should be your highest point. So you again, the concern is if you're gonna have a problem in the road and bridge area, it's probably gonna be flooding due to a hurricane or something of that nature, which is gonna occur right in your lowest funding point of the year. So you really need to maintain those reserves looking at potentially about 90 days, because here's what happens in an emergency situation is your revenues cease. You're not getting collections of fees and those type of things. You have to spend the money to repair things, so you've got to have those reserves to deal with that. So as you're looking at your budget in the next few months, I just wanted to remind you of that. Everyone's at a very healthy level, but again, between the general fund, which has maintained fairly high reserves to sort of cover for emergency, and the road and bridge, you may want to look at that, what your low point is, not the December point. So when we look at page 21 and 22, the county pretty much across all the major funds had a very solid year. You had almost a $1.6 million increase in fund balance, and every single fund saw an increase of some ratio of that. So very solid year financially. Looking at page 24 and 25 for the proprietary funds, these funds continue to operate very, very steadily. Their income is pretty steady throughout the year for both the landfill and the airport. Both have pretty good reserves. The one thing I want to point out that's a little concerning is if you look at page 25, the operating income line, the landfill's operating income, it operated at just under a $53,000 loss before the interest it got on the trust fund and those type of things. If you take the airport, it had a $1.9 million increase in operating income. However, that was with the $2.2 million grant. So it actually operated at a $300,000 loss for the year. So you may want to consider those two, because those are two areas that are funded completely by their fees and their sales. And so as you go into the budget year, you may want to look at what's going on with those two funds. So again, they have healthy reserves. It's not an immediate crisis situation, but you've been trending downward with that operating income for several years. So I just wanted to point that out to you. There's nothing in the notes I want to point out in particular, but I do like to point out on page 48 the budget for the year. And this is, for lack of a better word, this is a scorecard as to how the county is doing. And, it's very impressive when you look at the revenue part of the budget for the general fund. Y'all were $1.3 million ahead of where you had budgeted for the year. Sales tax collection continue to be very solid and robust, and that's really your leading factor, as well as your fines and fees and those type items. So those are signs of a very healthy economy, which is a good thing, but there's some volatility in both of those numbers. So when you look at the expenditure side, the county continued to be very conservative with the expenditures and had $770,000 that it didn't spend that it had budgeted. And those two amounts, the increased revenue and the underspent expenditures, went directly into your fund balance there for the general fund. And as you look on the next few pages for the road and bridge funds, the same type thing. You had revenue exceeding expectations, and you were slightly below your expenditures, and that went into that fund balance increase. On page 53, I want to point out an interesting situation you have with your pension. As you look at this schedule across several years, you'll see the pension liability in 2014 was 1.8 million, then it was 5.1 million, then 5.2 million, and it's 1.1 million this year. The volatility there is based on that line you see of investment income. In 14, you had $3.5 million in investment income. In 15, you lost $100,000. 16, you had almost $4 million in investment income. And in 17, you had $8.4 million in investment income. So there's been a lot of volatility with those investments, and that's going to continue going forward. The important thing to look at there is if you look at a percentage of your liability to what you've got funded, you've ranged from 91 to 98% funded. So y'all are doing what you should be doing every year, making your contributions. But that liability, as I talked about in your government-wide statement, is going to fluctuate wildly depending really on that investment income. And in 17, which is the year reported for your pension, you had a phenomenal year. I don't know that you're going to see that again for a while. So,
What would be the reason?
What
Are we retract, our economy retracting, what?
well,
Or are we having more
December of
retirement?
17, there were record highs in the stock market and bond funds were performing well. Everything was doing really well then. Right after that, in the spring, things dropped, and they've been steady since, but they haven't performed the way they did in 17. That was just,
Gotcha.
yeah, so just a timing issue. Now, your actuaries who determine your contribution weights, they're looking at that investment earning over a 30-year period, so they account for that roller coaster. And you're expecting about an 8% return. Y'all had like a 17% return that one year, so again, good news, but it's not going to last. Don't expect it going forward. It's going to waver, and so it's a good opportunity to point that out. Okay, and again, you're budgeting based on what your contribution rates are, so your contributions are going to stay fairly flat during this time. It's that earnings that are going to go.
Gotcha.
So, and y'all are again in great shape with the financing of your pension at over 90%. Texas has been very conservative with its financing of pensions. Most Texas pension funds are well funded. Some states have less than 10% funding and huge liabilities. Y'all are not in that case at all. Y'all are in good shape. So, on page 57, you have the other funds, the debt service, capital projects, and the non-major special revenues, and I'm not going to get into them, but they all continue to basically provide their functions, which is what they're doing. On page 74 and 75, you have the fiduciary funds. And these are funds that the county collects for other entities and holds onto and passes them through. And you did see, again, a very huge increase in these amounts with the local provider participation fund, as well as the tax assessor collector had a pretty good jump in its funds there at year end. So, the last item I want to point out is on page 77, and that's our compliance. As I said, we examined the Airport Improvement Program, which is a federal program that passed through TxDOT. You received about $2 million in federal money and then about $200,000 in state money for the airport improvements. We looked at compliance with their regulations with that, and everything was good. There were no issues. And so we are giving you an unqualified opinion related to compliance with that program. We do not have a management letter. Everything went well with the audit. There are no major issues we need to point out or anything. So I want to commend you for continuing with your conservative and prudent management. I want to thank Janice for her help, and if there are any issues we can assist with going forward, please let us know. Are there any questions or?
Last year, our fund balance was 42%. We're up on page 18 is where you stated about it.
Yes.
This year, we're at 49%. That's plus 7.
Yes.
In our increase. I'm trying to find a good balance number.
Yeah, and I understand that, and that's why, in talking to Janice and the judge both, I think you really should look, one of the interesting things about your fund balance is it very much mirrors your cash and investment balances. So generally, you can get an idea of what it's gonna be. So as you are budgeting, I would suggest you look at what those numbers are gonna be in August, September, in that range, because that's really what your true fund balance is at its low point. Which, you know, again, when we're looking at December, it's always gonna be high.
Right.
And so that doesn't give you a true reflection. And so that's why I was trying to point that out, that as you go forward, looking at the next month or so is what that cash balance is, which is ultimately the fund balance, gives you a better idea of where that needs to be. Because I would have,
Bottom line, we've got right at 6 months if you're looking at December, but if you're looking at the true low part of the year, you're looking at about 3 months, which is really our minimum that we need
I
for
think it's
any
getting
kind of emergency.
pretty close to that point. It
Yeah.
may be around 30% at that point, because
Right.
it's gonna drop down. And so the suggestion is, in the next month or so, you ought to look at that when you're going through the budgeting process, and give you a better picture at that low point, what your real reserves are.
Thank you.
Because,
And I'll make sure, you know, as we come up with those, that all the commissioners, everybody's aware of that too, so. Okay. Any other questions, gentlemen? Ladies?
well, as you have time to look through this, if a question comes up, feel free to contact me. We're here to help you anytime. Okay?
Eric, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, item number 9.
Do we need
Parent-
to approve that report?
Yep, I think so. Do we have to sign off on that report? Don't have to sign on it, just a presentation, okay? All right, good question though. Item number 9, appearance of Jeff Baker, Hudson Volunteer Fire Department, to discuss the petition for Emergency Services District. Good morning.
Good morning. Morning, Judge, Commissioners, guest president. My name's Jeff Barker. I'm the president of Hudson Volunteer Fire Department. I'm here this morning to talk about the petition that we turned in for the Angelina County ESD number 1. To get started, it is a tax base for the fire department. But to clarify, it's not a 10% tax. It's actually a 0.1% tax. It's 10 cents on the $100 evaluation. So for every $100,000 home out there, we would get $100, just to be specific about it. The petition was turned in with 150 signatures. We are attempting to get it on the November ballot, this coming November ballot, if that's at all possible. We do have the petition to the City of Hudson to include the City of Hudson city limits in the petition, and also to the City of Lufkin to include the ETJ, their ETJ and our ESD. The ESD borders or boundaries will be the same as the Hudson ISD boundaries, except for the portions inside the city limits of Lufkin. We do have a 1, a 5, and a 10-year plan that we are working on right now, and a budget we are working on at this time. The services that will be provided with the ESD are fire, rescue, and advanced life support, first responders. Unfortunately, for an ESD, it does not cover police services at all. That is exempt by law from an ESD. Would y'all like me to go into any of the plans, anything like that? Have any questions?
I think we're gonna have quite a few questions,
Okay.
gentlemen.
Now, I read up on it just a little bit, not enough, obviously, but it's gonna be quite a bit more volunteers, it looks like, on commissioners and stuff to do it, as well as auditors.
As
And I'm
well as
not
what? I'm sorry, as
sure-
well as what?
But I think it's gonna put more work on our auditor, correct? I think she'll have to audit their auditor. Is that the way I understood it?
Actually, there is a commission that is put together. Counselor, you've read into this pretty thoroughly. Would you approach? It has, there is actually a team, directors and commissioners that is totally separate from us.
Yeah.
That if this thing was voted in, which we're not actually approaching that right now, what we're looking at in today's discussion is to get it out there for people to talk about, look at it, and be thinking about it. But from what I understand, there's a pretty lengthy process just to get it on the ballot, as far as that goes. Now,
Yes, sir, Judge. Maybe to address your question, from the statutes, it does appear that if the petition was approved by the court and ultimately submitted to the voters and approved by them as well, then the district would be established, which is a separate subdivision, governmental entity. And the court would appoint 5 commissioners to, that would be in charge of governing that district. Now, I've only briefly looked at the statutes, I'm not overly familiar with it, but that appears to be the process, yes. So you would, at some point, the court would need to, if it was going to take this up, take the petition up to set the matter for a public hearing, and there's some notice requirements, posting and in the newspaper, and at the conclusion of the public hearing, the court would decide whether they're going to grant the petition or not. And from that point, if it was granted, the issue would be submitted to the voters in an election.
I understand there's a minimum of 21 days that you've got to post in order to, a minimum of 21 days before you can actually have the public hearing for things to be discussed and everybody can get their ideas and views out there. And then at that point, then we would actually make a decision as to whether or not to go forward with it, correct?
Yes, sir, there is some posting requirements, and it is, as I understand the statute, it is 21 days minimum notice. There's also a newspaper requirement, I believe it's 2 consecutive weeks before the hearing. So once the date of the hearing is announced, it looks like it's going to be at least something around a month off before you can actually have the hearing, comply with the notice requirements.
Okay.
Have y'all run any actuary numbers to see how much revenue you intend to generate?
Yes, sir. At the 10 cents on the 100, it would be roughly $433,000.
$433,000. How many positions are salary paid positions?
With that, we would put on 3 full-time firefighter positions and 1 secretary position, part-time. That way, when it comes to the audit, keeping our books and stuff like that, it's all above board.
So then Hudson Volunteer Fire Department's not Hudson Volunteer Fire Department anymore?
No, sir, it's still Hudson Volunteer Fire Department. Well, technically it'd be a combination department at that time. We're only looking at putting on 3 members during the day when our staffing is low. We're still gonna be volunteer all through the night and holidays and stuff like that.
You run your own EMS service?
We do not run our own EMS service at this time. We run advanced life support first responders, myself and multiple other people out there, paramedics, EMTs,
I've
stuff
seen
like
your
that.
paramedic, yeah.
And we go out, we have a first responder vehicle, we go out, start patient care until the transport unit gets there.
How would those positions be decided? Who would be the interview board to decide who is hired into the, I guess it would be a chief of?
There would be a chief, would be the main person that would be over that, but also we have a board for our Hudson Volunteer Fire Department on the fire line side that would all have their input. They would have to be a tested position. It has to go through all the recommendations of the Texas Commission on Fire Protection.
Any other questions?
I got one. At this point,
Yes, sir. Sure.
when y'all, when we have fires in the area,
Yes, sir.
y'all go out of the city limits of Hudson and, I mean, I've even seen y'all in Central at times helping them.
Yes, sir. We have mutual aid contracts
Yeah.
with Central, Dieball, all surrounded, including Lufkin.
I mean, y'all will still be doing that, correct?
Yes, sir. And to address that, the mutual aid contracts help us when it comes to the ISO, which I haven't discussed yet, but the ISO rating, right now, we haven't had that looked at in at least 20 years that I'm aware of. And right now, I'm Not 100% sure, but I'm confident that we are about the highest rating that there is out there. I've been in contact with the insurance agents in town. I've also been in contact with Mike Peach, who is an ISO consultant. It costs approximately $20,000 for them to come out, look at our fire department, give us recommendations to improve our ISO. Once that is done, we get a new ISO rating. If we can get it lower two points, the amount of money that would be paid in taxes by every home, well, not every homeowner, but the homeowners covered within our district, their insurance would drop. Let me rephrase that. Talked to one specific insurance company, Morgan Insurance. They did the numbers for me. On a $100,000 house, if we got our ISO rating lowered 2 points, they would save $100 a year on their homeowner's insurance. They would be paying the exact same number in tax, or in that tax. So it would be a wash. And that's if we can get it lowered just 2 numbers.
And you feel that if you had full-time employees instead of the all-volunteer force that you have now, that there's a chance of getting that 2-point reduction?
Oh, absolutely. For every employee that we have on staff, it counts as 3 volunteers by the ISO. So just putting on 3, it would be the same as getting 9 brand new, 9 trained volunteers. So that would help our ISO tremendously.
Okay. Any other questions? My suggestion at this time is that we relook at this again in 2 weeks and give everybody an opportunity to respond and think about it,
Well,
but it's up to y'all.
there's no action really to be taken.
No action
right?
today.
It's just,
No action
Yeah.
today.
Motion to table.
Motion to table. All right. We have a motion on the floor, a second?
second.
Second. Motion and a second on the floor to table it at this time. Relook at it at a later date. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Judge.
All right. Item number 10, appearance of Ricky Connor, Emergency Management Coordinator, to present and request approval of the Angelina County addressing policy. Good morning, Ricky.
Good morning. This has kind of been an ongoing thing I've been working on for myself and the 911. Make sure it says Angelina County addressing policy, it's a 911 addressing policy that we're looking at. And all this is for is to establish rules and guidelines for people moving into the area and people that are already here so that everybody follows the same rules. This policy was, actually saw this policy, Nacogdoches helped me with this policy. Also, I looked at tax policy on this also. So it's up to all the standards that we have to meet as far as a policy. Any questions?
It's an ongoing program that's working very well, but we just have not had our own specific policy for Angelina County.
And let me also add that Tia did about 90% of the work on this. She really did a good job.
So it's
on
Tia
this.
approved?
Yeah, yeah. I just looked over it. She did a lot of the legwork and stuff on it also.
All right, gentlemen.
How do we get away from address numbers not to exceed 5 characters? I mean, I'm just kind of glancing through this. Tia, do we have, addresses out there that actually exceed 5 characters?
Not that I'm aware of.
That's, I mean, I don't know.
Now, this is just because she gets all kinds of questions from people that,
Right.
especially on private roads. That's the biggest issue on
But this is
private
gonna help
roads.
us out a lot.
It's gonna help everybody
It's
out.
gonna-
You know, it just gives, it'll be posted on our website. So people moving to the area, they can look on there, they can contact us, come see T or look on the website either way. There'll also be a form on the website that they can fill out and send in where they don't have to come to the office.
Got it. What does our postal service have to say about it? Do they, any of our postmasters
Well, we don't deal with the post office, that's totally different. Once we assign them a 911 address, correct me if I'm wrong, Ted, once we assign them a 911 address, it's up to them to deal with the post office, correct?
Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
would think that would help them out also.
well, I would think it would.
I mean, I would.
No change in the way things have been being done in the last 2 years. This is just clarifying some items.
This is some guidelines where people can look at it before they call and ask questions that are in this document. I guess that's.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve and a couple of seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
Thank you, Ricky. Item number 11, appearance of Kerry Kirby, County Attorney, to discuss an interlocal agreement with the City of Diboll for ambulance services. Good morning again, sir.
Morning, Judge, Commissioners.
Morning.
Judge, you have before you, Commissioners, you have before you this morning a proposed interlocal cooperation agreement between the County of Angelina and the City of Diboll for the concerning payment provision of EMS or emergency medical services for the City of Diboll. As you're aware, under our current agreement with the City of Lufkin, the county is providing payment for all of the residents of the county, including those residing in the City of Diboll, to receive ambulance services or EMS services. This proposed agreement calls for Diboll to continue paying Angelina County, reimbursing the county for its pro rata share of the payments that Angelina County makes each year, and also for the county to continue to pay the City of Lufkin for those services. As you may recall, on, I think it was May 28th, the court approved a similar agreement with the City of Huntington, and this proposed interlocal agreement is basically the same terms, provides for them to continue to paying us the pro rata share of our bill each year that they've been paying over the years. This agreement, just like the one with the City of Huntington, will renew each year unless one of the parties terminates it. And it also provides that our agreement with the City of Diboll would terminate automatically if for any reason the underlying agreement with the City of Lufkin terminates. And finally, it also is drafted, does call for the City of Diboll to make, before the end of the year, one outstanding payment that they have from the year 2018. That's the agreement that's proposed, and I submit it to you for consideration at this time. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to address them.
Gentlemen?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any more discussion? I might add too that I'm going to go to the Diboll City Council this evening and get the reciprocal part of the agreement signed, so. All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Counselor.
Judge.
Motion passes. Now, wonderful part of the program. Parents of Ryan, Merrill, and Joe Reedus, County Extension Agents, to recognize outstanding accomplishments of the Angelina County 4-H members in state-level contests and leadership events. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Judge. Good morning, Commissioners. As y'all well know, but for any others that are listening, my name is Ryan Merrill, and I am the County Extension Agent for the 4-H program here in Angelina County. Also with me is Joel Reedus, our Extension Agent for Family and Community Health. What we're wanting to do with y'all today is just kind of share and celebrate some of the things that our wonderful 4-H program has going on. If it comes across as some bragging, yeah, we'll probably just go ahead and confess to that too. But we want to do that because we want the community to know what our 4-H program is up to. You know, I don't know if you are aware of this, but we are in Extension District 5. And so if you hear us say D5, and you know, that's what we're talking about, that's 22 of the surrounding counties. It goes as high as Longview, Wood County, down to Woodville, to the Louisiana border, all the way to Crockett. So we're talking about a pretty good chunk of East Texas that we are a part of. And out of those 22 counties, Angelina County has by far the largest and strongest 4-H program. We are currently sitting at 400 kids that are enrolled in that. And when you consider that there are family members associated with that, parents, little brothers and sisters that are coming up, you know, we're talking about 1,500 people in our community that are involved in our program. And again, that's the strongest by far, and that includes the Tyler area that has a much greater population. And so, you know, I don't take any credit for that. One of the things that we are very blessed with in this community is we have some great adult volunteers. We have families that have been a part of 4-H for a long time. I know there's several in here that have been a part of that for a long time. And 4-H is a tradition in our community, and people here believe in it. And so, you know, we have a tremendous number of volunteers. Other county agents are always so jealous that we always have so much help to pull programs together. We have some wonderful youth volunteers. You know, we try to get these kids as they're growing up and they've learned how to do all of these things. You know, as they get to be high school age, we pull them in to share, you know, their experience with younger kids coming up. And so, you know, all that to say that we're very blessed with a very strong program. You know, I think traditionally we think of 4-H and we think of the county fair. But a neat thing about 4-H is that we do a lot more than just raising livestock. We have a lot of other programs, and I've brought with me today an example of some outstanding kids that are part of our food and nutrition program. In food and nutrition, they learn all about making healthy eating choices, the nutrients that those foods have, and how those work in our bodies. And so, if I could, I'd like to have Taylor Castillo and Holden Bolware come up. These guys are some of our senior 4-H members. They've been with us for a long time. They are on our senior food challenge team. What food challenge is, you know, when we go to a contest, all of these food challenge teams are there. They are given a list of ingredients. They are not told what those are supposed to make. They are just given all of these things. They're given 45 minutes. They have to decide what kind of a dish those ingredients are supposed to make. They are to make that dish, and in the process, they have to do some things. They have to put together a presentation about what nutrients are in those ingredients, what that does for your body. They have to present that to judges, and so there's an interview process. And these two guys, not only did they won our county food challenge contest, they won our district food challenge contest. And they just got back from the state food challenge contest in College Station, and they have now qualified to go to the national food challenge. And so we are just super excited. We knew y'all would be excited to hear that. It's really great to hear that we've got some kids doing that. Joel, if you would kind of flesh that out. Joel has, because of his background and expertise, he has really spent a lot of time working with them and can give you some additional information about it.
All right, thanks.
And this is all done in 45 minutes?
The food challenge, yes, sir. They have 40 minutes to prepare their dish, so it's kind of pandemonium when the timer starts. But Ryan did a good overview of the food and nutrition project. And these two, and it's actually a 3-man team they're on. Blake Minshew is the other member. He had a work conflict today. These are busy guys. They're involved in a lot, but somehow they find a way to put in the time for 4-H and also help. These two in particular, like Ryan said, they've been doing food and nutrition for several years. I've been here 5 years, and pretty much every workshop we've put on, they've participated and usually are helping to lead it now at this point, teaching the younger kids. And one thing that's really cool to see, those younger kids that went to a session that one of these guys led or one of the other older kids, I see them using that when they're participating in Food Challenge or some of our other contests, Food Show, where they prepare a dish and present it. And sometimes whenever, it comes across from an adult, it might not seem that relevant, but whenever these guys say, man, they're cool, it sticks with them. Taylor, at one of our recent workshops, he did a demonstration of how to garnish and plate. And the stuff he was doing, I mean, making rose petals out of strawberries and things like that. And these kids, that was stuff I don't know how to do. I mean, so they're adding a lot, even though I have some background in food and nutrition, they can share a lot from what they've done and help the younger kids. So just to kind of add with what Ryan said on the contest, with Food Challenge, we had about 45 teams from across the state at our state food challenge, and they placed second in the whole state. So they're one of two teams that are going to not only this national food challenge, which will be in October, but here in a few weeks in August, they will be participating in what's called the Great American Seafood Cook-Off in New Orleans. And so that's a big event put on by the Louisiana Seafood Promotion and Marketing Board, and they have chefs from all over the country coming to see who's the best seafood chef. And they invite 4-H teams from several states. There's people coming from South Carolina and Tennessee and Georgia, and of course Texas and Louisiana that they'll be competing against. So they've been practicing. We were in fact working with Tomei's Catering last night. Chef Brittany over there was nice enough to kind of take these guys under her wing, and they were testing out recipes, so we're really excited about it. But we just want to reemphasize that even though it's so cool what they've done with the contest and what they've accomplished, 4-H is about so much more than winning a contest, getting a blue ribbon or whatever. These guys are learning life skills. They know a lot about healthy eating, cooking with a budget in mind, stuff that's going to stick with them in life no matter what they do. And lastly, just one thing I got to point out, especially since one of them's here, Ryan, talking about our adult volunteers. These two families in particular, their mamas, one of which Elizabeth Boulware, tremendously helpful, and we couldn't do it without those adult volunteers helping with the program. So just wanted to congratulate these guys. And one other thing, that they are putting some of these skills to use, shamelessly bragging, I guess, as Ryan said. Taylor and his brother, Zach, and another young man, they actually have started their own business. They have a snow cone stand there in the shopping center with Denman and Timberland, Snow Bros, and it's like gourmet snow cones. So
cool.
Excited about it. And he said maybe try to put a little bit of healthy spin, some real fruit and things like that. So we're super excited, super proud of these guys, and thank y'all for giving us the time to share.
Joel, where's National being held?
It's actually at the Texas State Fair in Dallas. It's October 1st, which is on a Tuesday, so anybody's welcome to come watch. Yes, sir.
Ryan, how many different organizations is there now? 4-H organizations?
Oh, the clubs?
Yeah, total.
We have 8 clubs that meet across the county. So what we try to do is for each community in the county, we typically have a club there. And so you don't have to travel very far. We can get hold of it pretty
And these
quick.
guys are actually in 2 different clubs, but they're working together on this program, which I think is cool.
Outstanding.
Having kids across the county working together.
Outstanding. Guys, good luck on your challenge. Very good.
All right.
All right. Item 13, discussion action on the recommendation from the insurance committee to increase the monthly fee from $40 to $50 for not participating in the county wellness program.
That's exactly what it says. The insurance committee is recommending that for those people that do not participate in the wellness program, that we increase their monthly fee from $40 to $50. And this will also help offset the increase medical claims that we're having.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any more discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. All right, item 14, discussion action on the budget transfer from the county attorney from utility telephone $1,690 to dues and publications $1,690.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second on the floor to approve. Any more discussion? All in favor? Thank you, gentlemen. Motion passes. Consider any miscellaneous routine items. Item 15.
Judge, we got 4 different items, 3 of them from Texas A&M, Ivy Life Extension Service, and 1
Right.
from the tax assessor collector. Motion to approve all 4.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve all of the individual items. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item 16, consider approval and authorization for payment of the bills as submitted by the county auditor. Gentlemen?
Motion to pay the bill.
Second.
All right, motion and a second to pay the bills. Any more discussion? Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, item 17, recess or adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate your patience. Thanks, Rick.